Hi guys, welcome to day 6 of the non-calculator questions from Nat 5 Maths. Here are the 5 questions we're going to look at today. So if you haven't done these, please pause the video now and do them for me now. Okay, first one. So f of x is equal to x cubed. Take away 2x. Okay. And you're wanting to find f of negative 3. Whatever is in this bracket here is getting substituted into the x values here. So if I change this to f of smiley face, this would equal smiley face all cubed, take away 2 multiplied by smiley face. Okay, if I change it to f with a little star in here, again it would change to little star cubed, take away 2 multiplied by little star. So if I am substituting negative 3, wherever an x appears, I'm replacing that with negative 3. So it becomes negative 3 all cubed, take away 2 multiplied by negative 3. Negative 3 all cubed is still going to be a negative, because a negative multiplied by negative is a positive, and then multiplied by another negative is still a negative. So that's going to be negative 27. And then we'll go negative 2 multiplied by negative 3, which is a positive 6. So your answer is negative 27 add 6, which is negative 21. Okay, that's your final answer. Next one. Okay, match the graphs with the equation. Very important that you know if a graph is sloping this way, it has a positive gradient. If it's sloping this way, it has a negative gradient. Oops. Sorry. Negative gradient. Okay, and thinking about where it cuts the y-axis, if a graph cuts up here, then the y-intercept must be positive, because it's above that x-axis. Must be positive up here. Okay. And then if it cuts it down here, that's below the x-axis. So this number here that it cuts the y-axis must be negative. So thinking about all of that there, and thinking about your y equals mx plus c, your gradient is here, and this is your y-intercept. Okay, so graph 1, if we look at graph 1 first, just change the colour of my pen. So look at this one first of all. So it's a positive gradient. Okay, so the number in front of the x has to be positive. Okay, so I can pretty much rule out C and I can rule out D because those gradients are negative. And then, so it's really your A or your B, and it cuts the y-axis below the x-axis here, so it must be a negative number. It actually cuts at negative 1, you can see that. So it must be this one here. Okay, so this graph must be y equals 2x take away 1. Okay, right, let's flip that part out, and then let's look at this equation here, or this graph, sorry, graph 2. So it's sloping down this way, so I know it's going to be a negative gradient, so it can't be B and it can't be A. So I know it's going to be C or D. Again, where does it cut? The y-axis cuts it here, which actually looks like a negative 1, but I think we're really just looking for positives or negatives here. So it must be a negative. Yeah, it must be a negative where it cuts the y-axis, so it must be D. So y equals negative a half x take away 2, even though I think that looks like, I guess we don't know the scale. We don't know the scale of, we're assuming that each each box represents 1, but each box in this graph could represent 2. Okay, so it must be that one there. Okay, next one. Find the missing length, leave your answer as a cert. Right, so we've got a right angle triangle and we've got a length that's missing. It's a shorter side. Shorter sides I always call A. You should recognise that this is a Pythagoras question. If you're working at a shorter side, which I call A, it is you stay A squared equals C squared, take away B squared. So A squared equals, your C is always going to be your longest side, which is across from your right angle. So it's going to be 6 squared, take away 4 squared, and then just work that through. So 36, take away 16. So A squared equals 20. So A equals the square root of 20. And then we want it in third form. So you should know how to simplify that root 20. So think about your square numbers. What is the biggest square number that fits into 20? And it's 4. 4 multiplied by what gives you 20? 4 multiplied by 5. And if I separate that into root 4, root 5, it gives me 2 root 5. And that's it. Final answer. Next one. Okay, we've got 3x take away 18 is greater than or less than 4 bracket x and 2. Okay, we're solving an inequality here. Very similar to equations. We're going to get rid of that bracket first of all. So we multiply the 4 by the x and the 4 by the 2. So nothing changes on the left hand side. This becomes 4x and 8. I'm just going to do a wee working line here so you know what I'm doing. You can do this several ways. I think I'm probably going to take away the 4x. It's going to be easier for you to understand. So I'm looking at this 3x and this 4x, and I'm going to take 4x away from both sides. Okay, if I do that, I get negative x, nothing happened to the take away 18, equals 8. Okay, so my objective here is to get the x's and the numbers separate. So I'm looking at this take away 8 and this positive 8, so I'm going to get rid of that negative 18 by adding 18 to both sides. So it gives me negative x is greater than or equal to 26. Okay, then how do I get x all by itself? I'm going to divide by a negative 1. Now be very careful if you're dealing with inequalities and you're dividing or multiplying by negatives. Something happens to the inequality sign. So if I ignore the inequality sign in the middle for a second, if I divide each side by negative 1, this becomes x and this becomes negative 26. And a wee side note here, if I said to you 5 is greater than 2. Is that correct? Yes, it is. That is correct. If I divide this side by negative 1 and if I divide this side by negative 1, this becomes negative 5 and this becomes negative 2. Is negative 5 still greater than negative 2? No, it is not. So what happens when you're dealing with negatives and inequalities? That inequality sign flips and becomes less than to make it true. So is negative 5 less than negative 2? Yes, it is. So whenever you're multiplying or dividing by negatives on each side of an inequality sign, this inequality sign has to flip. So similarly up here, this inequality sign here becomes less than or equal to. And that's my final answer. Okay, last one. Again, just multiply these out. I might do the box method this time, just to kind of show you the different methods. I kind of went over this slightly in the last one, but didn't fully go through the box method. So this first bracket, I'm going to put the 4x there and the negative 2 here. The second bracket, I'm going to do 2x squared, negative 3x, and a positive 1. And then I'm just multiplying each of them out to find what's in the box. So this one here is going to be 4x multiplied by 2x squared, which is 8x cubed. This one is negative 12x squared. This one is a positive 4x. This one is negative 2 multiplied by 2x squared, which is negative 4x squared. This one, -2 multiplied by -3x is a positive 6x, and this one is -2. And you should see that these two terms are like each other, so they will simplify. And these two terms, these two terms are like each other, so they will simplify. So what's my final answer? There's no other x cubed, so it's ax cubed. If I look at these two here, -4x squared, take another 12x squared away from it, gives you -16x squared. These two, you've got 6x, add 4x, which is 10x, and then you've got a -2 all by itself. Nothing else is added or subtracted to it. Okay, so that's the final answer. I just showed you a slightly different way this time, but you can certainly just take the first term in the first bracket and multiply it by each term in the second bracket, and take the second term in the first bracket and multiply it by every term in the second bracket also. Okay, hope that was helpful, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.